There's something special about having a space to go on Sunday mornings that looks like what we think of as a church. This space here is different than any other space we're in through the week. It's almost like it's its own little world in here. And every Sunday morning, when Juan and I first get here and I come in that back door, it's like stepping into a different world. It's like you enter in here and you're somewhere else. And it's not that God is in here any more than He's in anywhere else. It is this space is for us. It's for our benefit. The uniqueness of this space, the difference of it, helps separate us from the whir and bustle of the world outside. And maybe for just a little while, be able to think and consider things outside of the screaming and noise in the rest of the world. And so today I'm going to do something I have never done before in here. I'm going to tell you about a few situations I have encountered in my life that bring up profound issues. These are situations that have had profound impacts upon my life, not my personal life, but my life as a Christian. And I want you to just think. Now, for the first situation, I'm going to try to take you there. Because to really understand this, you had to have been there, in that environment. But that's not possible, so I'm going to do the best I can to transport you back. It's several years ago, a number of years ago. Wanda and I were called upon to do a series of regular home visits to a woman. We had never met this woman, knew nothing about her. So we drove up to the house. It was in a nice area. It was in an average middle-class area. It was not a large house. And when you pulled in the driveway, you could see that the yard in this house was not kept as nice as all the neighbors kept their yard. And you could see that there was a lot of stuff stacked up in the carport. And so we entered a door that was obviously not the door going from the carport like it in the house. It was a different door, and it was a big room. And in that room was a hospital bed. And in that hospital bed was a woman who was 55 years old, and she had been in that bed for 24 years. Now, she had a progressive neurological disease, and at the time we met her, she could do nothing besides move her hands and arms just a little, but no strength. She had the neatest little device by which she could type emails. There was a computer screen attached to one of the bed rails. A smaller screen about that big beside it. It had a screen with a keyboard displayed on it. And I never knew this existed, but this woman, if she focused her eyes on one letter on that keyboard, it would enlarge it. And then when she blinked her eye, it would type that letter on the computer. I did not know that was possible, but I saw it in action. You know, I even tried it myself. It was weird to think that that thing could tell you were looking at it. But this disease had struck this woman back years ago. She and her husband hadn't been married but a few years. They were both college graduates. Both of them had good jobs. They had saved some money. They had decided where they wanted to build their house. They had picked out a house plan that they wanted, talked to the builder, getting about ready to start building their house. And they were also going to start a family. They wanted at least 3 children. They both wanted a big family. And so life was going great for them. until one day when this disease struck and everything changed. Of course, she had to leave her job. Her husband eventually had to leave his job to take care of her. All the dreams they had when they got married were now out the window. There would be no new house. There would be no children, no grandchildren. And they would spend the next 25 years dealing with the disease and its aftermath. And she lay in that bed, unable to move. Now, these people have been very active in their church, and when she got sick, the church provided a lot of help. Their house was small, and I don't know if you've ever dealt with somebody with mobility issues, but you've got to have space to do that. So the church built a room over their house with a large room with a handicap bathroom, a small kitchen area that she could stay into. And as time went on, as this woman needed round-the-clock care, you know, her husband could do a lot. He couldn't be on duty 24 hours a day. And so that church and another local church partnered together for volunteers to come over and stay. And it was a really good thing that they did that, because without that, this woman would have had to have gone to a facility. And so here you had a lot of different people coming in and out through the week. And somebody comes in and says, well, what'd you do this week? Well, my husband and I took our grandchildren to the beach last week. Well, what'd you do last week? Well, we went to Charlotte. They've opened a new steakhouse down there. It's a wonderful place, and we just had a great time. Well, what'd you do last week? Well, we planted our garden, got tomatoes and green beans and corn and okra and squash, and we can't wait for it to come in. And I'm on camera. Well, what'd you do last week? Well, you know, I'm playing the organ at church now. You see what's happening? All these people are coming in here day after day after day. And they're telling her about their lives. And she's like, how did that make you feel? Try to put yourself in that situation. How would it make you feel? She wanted to go to the beach with her grandchildren too. She wanted to can tomatoes too. She and her husband would have liked to go to Charlotte and eat something too. You ever think about those things? How does it make them feel? But they never did get there. All she ever dreamed of doing, not washed away with that disease. And it bothered her. Why could other people have it so good? And she be like she was. But there was one aspect of that that was even more disturbing. These people that were coming in, and they were really good, doing a wonderful service. They came from churches that had certain people. And they would say things like, God has a plan. This is God's plan for your life. God's got you right where He wants you. God has the power to heal you, but it's not in His plan. This is God's plan for you. How would that make you feel? I know how it made her feel. Because I would often get emails from her that was sent in the middle of the night. You know, when you're laying in bed 24 hours a day, 2 o'clock in the afternoon is the same as 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, for all practical purposes. And she would email me expressing her frustration. And so after knowing that she was frustrated with all this stuff, we were there one day. And some woman was there. And she said, well, you know, God, this is God's plan for you. This is God's plan for you. God's plan for you. And I didn't have down all that I could tell. So I said this very moment. I said, that's easy for you to say. But if you were the one laying in the bed and someone else said that to you, how would you take it? Well, you would think I had just cussed the Virgin Mary. She went and told her own minister what this supposed minister had said. So whenever I hear this is God's plan, God has a plan, God has the power to heal you, but it's not in His plan, I think of that poor old woman laying in that bed. All her dreams crushed. There is no way that in these few minutes I can relate to you what Wanda and I felt and what we saw as we went over there week after week. It's one of the most pitiful situations I've ever encountered in my life. And she died a number of years ago. To the second experience. Some of you may have heard this before. My second year at college, I did not stay there any weekends. I always came home every weekend to fly. But I did stay some weekends. My roommate the second year was a guy whose father and grandfather had drowned at Myrtle Beach 2 years past on vacation. And the family was there. They got caught in undertow and got pulled out. They never recovered his father's body. They didn't find him. Now, if you grew up like I did, on Sunday mornings you went to church. It's just what you did. You know what I mean? It's just like getting up and eating breakfast. You went to church. And so on Sunday mornings, when I was there, I went to church. And I had some people, you know, that I knew from the year before we'd all go together. And I would always invite him to come along, but he never would. And that irritated me. And so after several times I got irritated at him, I said, look, why won't you go to church? And he told me that he grew up in church. His parents were always very active. The entire family always went every Sunday. And so, talking about a 16-year-old kid here, his father and grandfather just watched them drown at the beach, so he did what many people would do. He went to his minister to talk about it. He couldn't understand why something like that happened, so he went to his minister to talk about it. The guy said, look, this is God's will, this is God's plan, it was God's plan for your father, it's God's plan for your life, don't question it. And you know what this guy told me? He said, the reason I'm not going to church is I don't want to have anything to do with God if He's like that. The last situation involves an elderly woman named Shelby here. I did not know her. But that her daughter had died, and that was back when this place was a funeral home. And sometimes when somebody died and they didn't have a minister to do the funeral home would call me. So I got asked to do this funeral. Now, the woman was very elderly. She had issues getting around. Her husband was already dead, and her daughter had just died. And her daughter never married and had no children. So this was it. One day I went to her house, never seen her before. And I told her how sorry I was about her daughter. And she said, "It's God's will." I wish you could have seen that woman's face when she said that and heard her tone of voice. It really pained her, if you can imagine. And the way her face looked and the way her voice sounded indicated to me that she felt that she was suffering under God's will. That God had intentionally put suffering on her. That he had intentionally given her daughter this bad disease so she would die years before she should have. And that God had caused her to bear this terrible burden, this suffering, and then caused her to face old age and declining abilities alone, with both her husband and her daughter taken away. As we sit here in the quietness of this space and get rid of all the noise of what we have heard and what we have been taught, I want you to think about the hurt that these three people experienced. God is in control. It's God's will. God has a plan. God could heal you if it were His will. I have seen over and over again in my life how platitudes like that hurt me. I read a book a number of years ago by a man who had a long career in hospice and palliative care as a chaplain. He said that in his career, he had seen hundreds and hundreds of clients pray and pray and pray and have other people pray and pray and pray for them. You know what he said? They all died. Disappointment. And more than a little bit of resentment that God's plan for Mary was for her to drop over suddenly dead in her own home at the age of 93, living at home independently. That's God's plan for her. But God's plan for you is to lay in bed as a vegetable from the time you're 31 years old until you die at age 56, 25 years later. Would you not resent it if it were you laying in that bed? God has a plan. God's in control. This is God's will. Yeah, I would. I was in it, and I'm not even laying there. If I was laying there, I'm sure it's the devil would be sure. You see, that's why I spend a lot of my time in study, looking back at ancient Christianity. Something has been lost along the way. When I run across people like I've talked about today, and I see those people, and I hear someone telling me God has a plan, this is God's plan, I think, no, it's not. You see, looking at the Gospels, when we see Jesus heal people, It's hard to get the idea that God wanted these people to be sick. It's hard to get the idea that God caused it. In fact, one woman who was crippled, he said she was bound by Satan. In many of the healings Jesus does, he casts out demons. And that's the clear implication that the cause is the opposite power, not God. God wanted the people released, and that's what Jesus did. So we can say that the will of God, the plan of God, is for all people to be released, all people to be freed, all people to be rescued from the forces that cause these things. I don't claim to have any answer, but I will tell you one thing. It is not as simple as God is in control. God has a plan. It's God's will. That is 100% false. And that is not a Christian way of looking at it.